This was actually the first release ever in the history of Scotch whisky to use mezcal casks. You've got a very good nose.
Yeah.
Tongue of the gods.
Tongue of the gods.
马修往后的日子将会在世界各地介绍这么一位台湾的神之蛇。
Slangiva.
好好喝。他不用啊！
不要客气了，不用喝掉了。哎呦，
这个人干杯完怎么突然摇头晃脑起来
Again, kind of rolling the glass around the nose. Again, both nostrils, you're able to take in all the scents. But again, we use this lovely Glencairn glass. Again, it's tulipped to guide all those flavour notes to the nose.
不好意思，社长，您手上的是酒杯，不是梳鼻通，好吗？
有人的地方就有江湖，有酒的地方
我让你舒服。
漂亮。欢迎收看李耀社长来宾就，我是李耀，
我是尤拉。
Matthew。今天呢，我完全不用讲课，因为今天我邀请到的是全球品牌大使来到我们节目当中，我们就负责喝酒。
这一集送丢力赶扣丢袜。
他们在这几年当中出了4款的品项，哪4款品项呢？
帝王纯顺4个口味，
龙舌兰风味桶、日本的水油桶，还有呢？
加勒比海的
兰姆桶，漂亮。
还有呢？是什么？我看一下。哦，葡萄牙波特桶。
花一次钱就可以喝到4种口味，这么爽的事情。
什么叫花一次钱？
我一次买1套嘛，对不对？所以到底这4种风味桶到底多厉害？所以我们请到全球品牌大使。
等一下现在就能喝了吗？
啊，等一下讲我们就可以喝啊，对不对？
好。
而且我们为了这4支酒，我喝完了以后，马上打电话给我们的马修，我说马修我喝不懂，你来教我好不好？他马上就飞过来找我。
马修应该是在电话里头说：“社长，中文我听不懂。”
我觉得我最想要问的就是说，他在照片上面看起来很年轻，然后本人跟照片一模一样，然后我就很好奇，我真的很想问你说 ，How old are you？
A very good question. How old do you think I am?
我觉得你应该就20几岁，因为大家知道外国人看起来就是比较操劳，他这个看起来娃娃脸的。
你怎么可以捏他？你怎么可以捏他？
尤拉做的不是效果，是他精心为自己设计的桥段。
Don't touch your face.
That costs extra money.
好啦，我猜你大概26。
This is why I love coming to Taiwan as well. I could live here. I think people think I'm so young. So actually, I'm 33 years old.
看不出来。
The secret is whiskey. Keeps you looking young.
Me too.
今天邀请马修来上我们的节目哈，不是来让你我爱红娘。
社长的威严俨然受到马修极大的挑战。
这个应该是本集最重要的问题了。Are you single?
I'm not. I'm very happily married. So yeah. Sorry to disappoint.
那你太太不会生气哦？
Oh no, she's very understanding as well. I'm very lucky with my wife. Yeah.
问他单身吗？结婚吗？到底跟我们今天帝王威士忌有什么关系？对不对？所以我们要进入主题。既然是全球品牌大使，我们要问第一个问题是：马修他到底为什么会进入威士忌这行业？是什么原因？在哪一个年代进去的
？So I've been in the whiskey industry for a long time. Almost. In a way, I've been in the whiskey industry almost all my life. I come from an area of Scotland called Speyside, and I grew up in a little village in Scotland called Craigellachie, which is also one of our distilleries we have within the John Deere and Sons group. So my first experience with whiskey was at 5 years old. When you start your school, you go to the cooperage to learn how they make barrels. So I've been surrounded by people making whiskey all my life, so learning for many years. Officially now I've been in the industry for 15 years. And like most people from Speyside, I started off as a tour guide. In your summer holiday job while you're at university, it's the best fun. It's good money for working, lots of good whiskey, and lots of good fun. And for me there, I realized, it was very special having distilleries in your village. People came from all over the world to learn about our whiskey and to taste our whiskey. So for me, it was as a tour guide I realized I was very lucky. It was very special to have these whiskey making distilleries in our village. So from there, I finished as a tour guide after almost 7 years alongside my studies. I then joined a graduate program for whiskey where I got sent to different countries, living in different countries around the world. So I lived in the United States, I lived in Miami for a year, lots of fun, and then out to South Africa in Cape Town for a year as well, so working as an ambassador in markets. After that, I wanted to come home to Scotland, so I took on the role of Brand Home's ambassador at Aberfeldy, so the home of Dewar's Whiskey, where I'd look after VIP guests if they came to visit the distillery. And then almost 3 years ago, I became the global brand ambassador, getting to travel around the world now and talk about whiskey. So I've had a very interesting career within the whiskey industry, but lots of fun and great to meet lots of wonderful people like yourself.
OK， 既然马修身为我们百家得的品牌大使，如果他5年前开始担任品牌大使啊，那他请问，我要问一个最重要的问题：哪一个国家的女生最美？
社长绝对是帮群友问的，他怎么可能单纯自己好奇？
I mean, the answer, of course, has to be Taiwan here. If I say anything else, I'm going to be in trouble. So Taiwan, of course.
那哪一国人就是酒量最好？
Again, Taiwan for me is such an impressive market, such an impressive country to visit. I think you guys not only enjoy drinking whiskey, and you do drink a lot of whiskey, but you love learning about it. And for me, that's one of the most special things about the whiskey industry. You have so much passion here in Taiwan for Scotch whiskey.
那我觉得要问另外一个问题：全球品牌大使他最爱哪个国家？除了台湾以外。
I was going to say 100% Taiwan is the answer here. Oh, I don't know. I mean, I'm so lucky I get to visit so many different countries. And I think each one is special for a different reason. I love visiting Asia just as an area, I think as well. You have such a rich whiskey drinking culture and people, I'm still amazed today with how many people love Scotch whiskey. And I think what really is special about Taiwan, I think most of all, is from my time here, how many people have come from Taiwan to visit Scotland. You know, I think that shows your level of passion and a real thirst for knowledge in Scotch whiskey. So I know you said apart from Taiwan, but Taiwan for me really is the most special.
他没有被你骗
这个品牌大使真的很厉害，
好厉害
见人说人话，见鬼说鬼话，难怪他是全球品牌大使。进入我们的重点主题，就是帝王威士忌的起源，因为毕竟之前都是我们在胡乱嘛，对不对？品牌大使现在讲了，但是请他在简短的3分钟以内。
No problem.
OK, stop.
Yeah. Okay, so I've been told to tell the story of Dewar's in 3 minutes.
Yes.
In Scotland, we say I'm the word a blether. So a blether is someone who talks a lot. So I'm going to find this difficult. Are we ready? We're going to start the watch now. So 3 minutes.
Yeah,
Go.
yeah, 3 minutes.
So for me, the history of Dewar's begins with a man called John Dewar, hence where the company name comes from for us. He was a man born very close to our distillery of Aberfeldy, born in one of the neighbouring villages. And for me, the village has one of the funniest names in Scotland. He comes from a village called Dull, D-U-L-L, which would mean like boring as well. So from a little boring place, a little dull village, not much happening. So he left home in his 20s, he moved to Perth, which is one of the bigger cities within that area of Scotland. And there he would join some family members in a wine and spirits shop. And he worked with them for almost 20 years. And then in the year 1846, he would open up his own shop under his name. So that really is the beginning of John Dewar & Sons as a business. We see opening our own shop in 1846. At that time, it wasn't just Scotch whiskey. As a shop, they were bringing in Irish whiskies and cognacs and many things. But then in the 1860s, we start to see this new kind of whiskey emerging called blended whiskey, where a blender like John, he was taking lots of the best single malt whiskies from around Scotland, which were quite heavy, quite rich, quite fiery, not the easiest to drink. And he was starting to blend them, mix them with grain whiskies from around Scotland, which were much more mellow, much softer. So John, really being a pioneering blender, realised when you mix malt whiskies with these lovely big flavours with the much softer grain whiskies and you bring them together, you get the best of both. You get this wonderfully rounded flavour profile. So from there, John Dewar was actually the first person to put a family name on the bottle. So we see the launch of Dewar's blended whiskies from that time. Now, sadly, John passed away in the year 1880, and the business would pass on to 2 of his children. So we have John Alexander Dewar, his oldest son, and we have Thomas Dewar, his younger son. So the 2 would carry on the whiskey business. Now, Tommy Dewar, he was a bit like me. We can think of him as the first global brand ambassador, the first person to travel around the world promoting the whiskey. And thanks to this, Dewar's boomed all around the world. Our first official master blender we would take on at the end of the 1890s. And his name was A.J. Cameron. So he was a very special man, a really special blender. And he realized by aging whiskies for extra time in casks, you're able to get a much smoother style of whiskey making. So even for Deers today, I'm almost out of time. Even for Deers today,
time's over.
Double-aged, last thing, double-aged for extra smoothness. You know, that's what we like to do. And what Stephanie, who is our 7th master blender, she continues that today. History done, close.
那个不愧是全球品牌大使，真的很厉害。他可以在3分钟之内把所有这个帝王威士忌讲得一清二楚，包括我们的 John 还有这个丑米，是非常非常伟大。而且帝王是第一个把这个威士忌放进玻璃瓶的人，而且帝王也是第一个做广告的人。所以哇，他整个把整个历史故事讲得清清楚楚，包括最伟大的就是他刚刚讲的丑米。非常非常伟大，不愧是全球品牌大使，帝王你请对人了。那我们第二个问题还是要问的，就是为什么会出帝王的纯顺系列
？A great question.
Yeah.
For me, you know, today I mentioned that we started with a master blender called A.J. Cameron.
Yeah.
Today we have our 7th master blender, and her name is Stephanie McLeod.
Yeah.
And she is now one of the most award-winning whiskey makers in the world. She's the only person to win the international whiskey competition Master Blender of the Year 5 times. Yeah. Nobody else has won it more than twice, so she's just showing off now, winning that many times. But what Stephanie does incredibly well is creates balance within a whiskey, and she's a master in using finishing casks with her whiskey as well. So what we see really here with the series is her mastery in the use of cask finishing and exploring different cask finishes from around the world. So we really are going to take you around the world in just a few whiskeys.
所以其实那个我们刚刚有提到，就是他们首席调酒师连续拿到5年的这个首席调酒师的这个荣誉了。所以坦白讲呢，我刚刚听到他在说了这段话的时候，代表这个首席调酒师在干嘛？他在挑战自己。我就偏要挑战自己，我都拿了5年了，我还不挑战自己，我想挑战谁？
果然是帝王真正的对手只有自己。
我们的马修要请我们喝酒了。
终于好渴、哦。
第一款酒你要请我们喝什么？
I think if anyone is new to our series, for me, the Caribbean Smooth is just a perfect place to start.
那第一款酒就是请我们马修先让我们介绍我们的第一款的加勒比海风味兰姆桶。
Great. So for me, you know, before we go into what's so special about the rum cask, I think we need to understand first what's so special about Deers and what we do with the blend. So across the whole series here, we're going to see what we call our double aging process taking place. So with Deers, we believe we double age for extra smoothness. So what I mean by this is we age the whiskey in casks, again coming from many different distilleries, matured in many different casks. We then blend it together, and after that most whiskey companies would then put the whiskey into a bottle. Now with Deers, we like to add an extra stage. So we use these lovely spent casks, these lovely kind of marrying casks, where we will double age. We will put the whiskey, now that it's blended, now that it's married together, back into these secondary casks for a period of about 6 months. And what this is going to do is allow all those lovely flavours that we brought together to mellow, to work together, and to soften, making Deers an extra smooth whiskey. Now with this series, we go even one stage further. So we're going to introduce different finishing casks. And with this Caribbean Smooth, of course, with the influence of the Caribbean, we're looking at rum casks. So again, we're finishing for several months in a rum cask. And again, straight away on the nose, I'd love to get your thoughts here as well. Again, a lovely, sweet, rounded nose. But we can start to see the influence of that rum cask coming through. For me on the nose, it's lovely tropical fruity notes. For me, I think bananas, quite ripe tropical fruits. There's that lovely cereal note in there as well. And then finally, just that wisp of smoke that we associate with the Deers. Again, for me, the word when you think of Stephanie McLeod is balance. Everything beautifully rounded and extra smooth. Those are my thoughts. I'd love to get your thoughts on this whiskey as well.
因为我发现他那个闻的时候吸的好大声哦。
尤拉，请不要一直偷看马修大使好吗？
而且它真的是有那种不要那种水果啦，还有他刚刚讲的 banana， 入口的时候开始比较就绵密滑顺感，它其实是有非常棒的平衡感的。这样酒体是中等，没有那么多的油脂感，但是因为没有那么多油脂感，所以会让它比较丝滑跟绵密，然后蛮适合台湾人日常饮用酒。
那我觉得这款酒很适合直接纯饮，因为它的口感就是比较像社长说丝滑，香气也就是很适中，非常刚好。你纯饮的话，就是可以给你带来就是很好的品饮感受。
For me, I think, when I nose and I taste this whiskey, I am transported to a tropical island. That's maybe a little bit more familiar here in Taiwan. In Scotland, it's quite cold, quite wet. So this is like a holiday for me, in a glass. Like being on a tropical island. Wonderful.
我接下来的3支我要就是很大力的闻闻看有什么，说不定要很大力我才闻得到
他为什么要把那个鼻子放那么深呢？
Again, for me, putting the nose into your glass, again, it surrounds your nose with these lovely flavour compounds. Again, you don't have to put your nose all the way in. It depends on the strength of the whiskey as well. But for me, again, kind of rolling the glass around the nose. Again, both nostrils, you're able to take in all the scents. But again, we use this lovely Glencairn glass. Again, it's tulipped to guide all those flavour notes to the nose.
不好意思，社长，您手上的是酒杯，不是梳鼻通，好吗？
Of course, we have a glass of whiskey in our hand now, so I think I need to teach you the Scottish toast we like to do. So when we have a glass of whiskey in our hand, we like to say Slanjava. So Slanjava means good health. Hey guys, thank you so much for having me here today. Slanjava.
It's a finish, Salanjaba, Taiwan is 干杯，干杯 is a finish,
Yeah.
Finish, okay.
Okay, so today we say Slanjava, which means enjoy slowly.
品牌大使会讲话又能屈能伸哦。
Slanjava.
好好喝。他不用啊，
不要客气了，不用喝掉了。哎呦，
这个人干杯完怎么突然摇头晃脑起来？
第2款酒就是我们现在台湾比较流行的日本水油桶。究竟日本水油桶运到了苏格兰过桶会呈现什么样的风味呢？我最好奇的是，为什么在酒标上面会出现一个盒子？到底什么原因呢 ？What do you mean?
I don't know.
我们是全台湾第一个问到品牌大使的人。
No, I mean, so we've explored the Caribbean, we've seen those lovely, bright tropical fruits, and now we're off to Japan. So again, a very similar initial process where we're doing that double aging for extra smoothness, which is the way of Dewar's whiskey. And again, we're going to see finishing for again about 6 months here with a Mizunara cask, again from Japan. Mizunara is known for being this lovely, light, refreshing cask. If we think of the style of Japanese whiskey, for me, it's very delicate. It's beautifully floral. It's doing the same as me now, the nose in the glass there. So you can see, by comparison, wow, this one's much more delicate, much lighter, I think. A lovely sort of velvet in the nose. For me, already very floral. We can see it's very fresh in the glass here as well. Lovely sweet notes of vanilla, I think, coming through. Again, some cereal notes as well, but a wonderful freshness, a wonderful lightness, I think, to this whiskey, but rounded out again in that typical Dewar's style. What do you guys think for this one?
我觉得那个马修这样闻鼻子好痛啊，就是因为他的鼻子比较尖一点，所以他可以放进去。我们台湾人鼻子比较扁，就不要放进去，不然鼻子会痛。我试了2次，很痛。刚刚马修讲说，这是因为帝王最有名就是2次陈酿，然后他在过桶到他这边6个月当中我们一样来分享看看。我觉得它比较是细致优雅，没有水油桶那种很标准的线香味，它比较偏向于木质调性，但是它那个木质调性不是辛香料的那种很刺激的木质调性，是比较沉稳。
I think. For me again, Stephanie being a master in finishing, the finish should never be the most dominant flavour within it. So I think it's an influence of Mizunara, but it's not heavy Mizunara.
Oh, heavy.
It's just an influence from the Mizunara. So again, for me, as I say, it's that lovely delicate nature that we find within the Mizunara cask. I definitely agree once you have a taste there. On the palate at the back there, there's a little spice coming through. And also, I think, quite a natural sweetness. Now, that kind of honeyed sweetness for me that comes through is less from the Mizunara finishing and more from the kind of typical style of the Dewar's House style that we find within our blend. Mizunara casks, I'm sure you are very aware, are some of the most expensive casks to buy in the world. So I think for me, it's great that, with our kind of more entry side of Dewar's, we're able to offer this drinking experience to people, who might be newer getting into whiskey at a very good price, I think, for normally what you'd expect to find with a Mizunara cask.
我在喝完以后它的舌头后方有很明显的涩感，对，会不会有那种感觉？
I think for me, I agree definitely with you there. I think it has this wonderfully rounded, dry finish, and again, I think that's definitely an influence of the Mizunara casks coming through.
因为马修可能不知道，他旁边就是坐了这一位，所以在台湾有一个称号 ，God Tom。
尤拉竟然在神之舍面前笑到面目全非，你的礼貌呢？
Hey, cheers to that. I think you might have had too much whiskey.
用英文讲笑话到此结束。好，那这一款酒呢，尤拉分享一下你的感受。
我发现就是喝完酒之后，就是听英文真的功力会大增
的哦。
这支酒我刚刚用了马修式的闻香方式之后。我觉得我闻到了那种很像在森林里面，然后有那种花香感、水油桶的感觉，是没有那种线香的味道，但是它有就是带出一点悠悠的一些木质的感觉，我觉得很棒很棒。而且这一款的香气比较浓郁一些了，口感比较干净，然后又比较优雅，然后细致。这支我更喜欢了。
A great point, I think as well. So we see with the a difference I think between aging and finishing. So I think with the double aging, that cask that we're putting the whiskey back into, we don't see it adding any new flavour. The job of the secondary cask for the double aging is just a space to let all the flavours that we've already created work together. So the job of a finishing cask is a little bit different. Again, you're trying to influence the flavour and change the style of the whiskey. So again, finishing tends to be for quite a short period of time, 4, 5, maybe 6 months.
因为刚刚马修其实有提到就是说有2次陈酿，它在陈酿过程当中，它在第2次陈酿的时候是在静置桶里面。那你今天再过到6个月，那代表什么事情？代表这个橡木桶它再婚。因为我一直很好奇，想要问一个问题，就是他们胆敢做这种平衡的挑战，而且用调和的方式去呈现，让消费者用这么平价的这个实惠的价格去喝到这个酒，他们心里到底在想些什么？感觉它应该是非常的昂贵才对，
珍贵啊，稀少。
A very good question. So I think for Dewar's, we really see ourselves as one of the most progressive whiskies in the industry. And I think, it's important to allow consumers at any price point to be able to experience these wonderful whiskeys. So for me, it's almost like a gift back to the consumer. We're giving them something incredibly special at a very good price point so they can get to explore the world of whiskey and our malt master and master blender, Stephanie, her amazing skills.
因为 Matthew 说这些都是一些很珍贵的桶子，而且是稀有桶就是我们其实市面上不常见到的，所以我非常好奇的是，这些会下来以常态品的方式来贩售吗？
A very good question. Again, it's something that we plan to retain for many years, and we plan to keep exploring as well. So I think watch this space. Keep an eye on Dewar's if you're at home, because we will always have some very interesting innovation coming out every year. We'll have to wait and see. Again, it's I think we plan to continue them for several more years at least.
除了日本水油桶，然后还有加勒比海的桶子，还有包括龙舌兰桶，它未来一定还会试其他国家的项目。
没错，
对，一定会去不断的尝试出来，然后会出一个环游世界系列。
哇，那台湾桶会是什么？
台湾桶那一定是荔枝，但是因为荔枝在苏格兰法令当中是没办法去这个陈酿的。各位科普时间到了，荔枝这种是有带核的，那有带核果的，在苏格兰法令规定是不能去入桶的。在台湾来讲的话，有可能，比如说，因为我们是水果王国，就
香蕉桶
有香蕉桶吗？
没有核啊，
我只听过香蕉船而已。这样好了，那进入我们那个第3支酒的环节，来葡萄牙波特桶。各位，波特桶坦白讲我很喜欢，其实过波特桶非常非常困难，但是要找到喜欢的非常非常难。
不好意思，倒太慢了。来，你先。
Thank you.
Too much. 好，来，我们的马修来为我们介绍他的品饮。
Next up, we're traveling all the way to Portugal,
Yeah.
and this time we have the Portuguese smooth, using some wonderfully rounded port casks. Now, when I think about port, again, it's a very delicious wine, a lovely sweet wine, again with wonderfully rounded, rich, fruity flavours. So for me, again, as soon as you go in with the nose, wow! I think this probably has the biggest, richest bouquet of flavours. Lovely big red, ripe fruits. But I think again a little melon in there as well. It's quite sweet, but wow, what a wonderful finish, what a wonderful influence I think from the port cask. Again, I'd love to get your thoughts here. What do you think? Is this a favourite for you?
我觉得它闻起来有那个红色的莓果，接近比较热带水果那种感觉，所以这个是我非常喜欢的味道，因为这个味道是非常突出，令人比较舒服的感觉。这样
I agree. I think for me it's that perfect balance between red berries and ripe tropical fruit. Again, melon for me is one of the standout notes here. You've got a very good nose.
Yeah.
Tongue of the gods.
他们就卡。
马修往后的日子将会在世界各地介绍这么一位台湾的神之蛇。
这个口感哈就开始接近比较厚重一点，有一些比较轻轻的一些刺激感，但是很轻哦，挑逗你一下，挑逗一下那种感觉。
I think, as you say, when you see the glass, the whiskey has this lovely viscosity. There's a richness to it that you feel on the palate. And again, as you say, that finish, I think with the port casks, again, that balance within the blend that we have, it's a beautifully long, spicy finish.
白胡椒的结尾，比较辛香料的一些结尾，但是我觉得它的味道是舒服的。酒体哈，它的油脂比较扎实。
For me, this is the wonderful thing. You know, we've seen so far 3 of the 4 whiskies, but each one has such a unique and different flavour, which is why I think it's very hard just to try one. You want to try the whole range, which I think is so exciting for us.
我觉得前面2款酒都非常的平衡，平衡就是非常高的分数。但是葡萄牙波特酒看人喝，我们还是要讲实话，到频道上面要讲实话，不会因为全球品牌大使在这边，我就4款都说好话，不会。什么人喝呢？进阶消费者喝。如果你是初入门，想要了解其他风味桶的话，我非常建议加勒比海还有水油桶，你可以尝试，而且又感觉不会太刺激那种感觉的话，
对，比较顺口的感觉。
那我们现在全球品牌大使时间有限，我们现在拍摄的地点就在桃园中正机场，下来跟我拍1个小时，他直接就要飞走了。来，我们第4款酒龙舌兰桶，来请我们的这个马修帮我们介绍。
So I've talked too much. I think I have a plane to catch, right? So this one we'll need to go fast. This was one of our earliest releases within the series, and for me this is one of the most experimental that we see. A few years ago now, the rules for the casks you could use for Scotch whisky were changing.
Okay.
And for the first time, I think it was now about 2019, the Scotch Whisky Association, who are our governing body, they allowed the use of mezcal casks. Now, luckily, we had been already experimenting with mezcal casks. So as soon as the rules changed, we were ready for having a release. So this was actually the first release ever in the history of Scotch whisky to use mezcal casks. And the brand of mezcal we're using is Illegal. So it was a collaboration, and wow, what a different whiskey. Straight away on the nose, we can see the smokiness we normally associate with the Dewar's blend, we can see it elevated. We can see it heightened again with that influence from the mezcal. So again, we're doing what Dewar's do best. We are double aging for extra smoothness, and then we're finishing with those Illegal mezcal casks to really influence and stretch out that beautiful smoky note we see within the Dewar's house style. What do you guys think of this one?
我觉得它这款酒的话，它闻香起来的话，就有那个比较白胡椒的味道，然后有比较那个带咸甜的感觉，而且有一点那种生干地那种感觉，热恋那种感觉，
我知道也好甜，
对，很甜腻，就是好像感觉我好像想要赶快拥抱它那种感觉。
So sweet.
As well, I think for anybody who's watching this, who's just a fan of flavour or looking for something different within whiskey, this is an absolute must try.
我们之前在我们频道上面找过初恋，但是从来没有喝过热恋，
哎，真的哎，
就是有点那种热呀。
Slange.
要干杯哦。
No, Gambe. I have a plane to catch. I need to go.
好好喝哦。
口感里面有一个特别的味道，有点像是木质感，有点像去文昌街家具店，你走进去会闻到那种比较 新鲜木头的感觉，新的家具。
有一点那种青椒绿色的感觉。哎，没事吧 ？Are you drunk？
你现在在挑战他就对了。
刚刚他讲太慢，我把它喝下去。
各位，那个我们这款酒
喝太快，
坦白讲，我们就不需要介绍了。为什么不需要介绍？因为 Yola 已经 finish 了 ，finish 就看你了，你 finish。啊，说这种小事哦。
Oh, this is too much. I'll give you some. There you go. You can have some of mine.
我终于喝到男神的口水了，哇！
这剧情的走向是不是由拉耀社长安排的？
It's been my pleasure to join you. Thank you so much for having me. I hope you've enjoyed listening along at home, and I hope you will all enjoy our wonderful Dewar's whiskey. Guys, thank you very much. As we say in Scotland, Slàinte mhath. Cheers. Cheers.
社长挖洞给马修，还盯着他看，竟然连全球品牌大使都不放过。
我刚刚一直盯着他，然后他也盯着我，我们两个四目相接。然后呢，到底要喝还是不喝？他决定还是喝掉了，因为毕竟在节目前面他不能丢脸。但是他刚刚倒酒给尤拉的这一幕，将会成为我们 YouTube 史上唯一一个全球品牌大使把酒倒给别人的人了。Thank you so much. 那个我们的频道从我们上一集去日本采访，对不对？然后到台湾的酒厂，然后这一集我们请到了全球品牌大使来到我们的节目当中，所以坦白讲，我们李耀社长的频道开始国际化了
，international。
So what I want you all to do is like, subscribe, and make sure to turn on notifications.
我们的李耀社长来品酒，咱们下礼拜见，拜拜，
拜拜。
Bye bye.